Hey you guys, it's your girl Natural. Welcome back to my channel. I'm so happy you're here. If you're new to this channel, please do me a favor. Go ahead, hit the like and subscribe button, hit the bell so you know whenever I post a video. So today we're going to talk about a really important subject for our mental well-being. If you're on my channel, you know I'm all about happiness, positivity, effectuating the small changes in our life that we can do to have better mental health, physical health, spiritual health. And we live in the day and age of the narcissist. We live in the day and the age of the narcissist. Now, recently I talked in a video about cutting toxic friends out of your life and how some people will quite literally sabotage you. And a lot of times, sabotage your friendship. And a lot of times, those friends are narcissists. It's like you didn't see it in the beginning, but slowly they really started to show what their true face was. It was never ever about you. It was never about being a compassionate friend to you. And we live in the day and age of the narcissist. There's really no other way to put it. When you look around in your everyday life, you probably see that in general, it just seems like people are less patient and less compassionate. They're more driven by hate and more attracted to hate speech and forming extremist groups, just being extremist in general. Less inclined towards compassion or spirituality or faith doctrine. We live in the day and age of the narcissist, and if the people like me, who are empathic, this channel is called It's the Real Natural for a reason. Yes, we can kiki and we can talk about all of those subjects that are so tantalizing, like the Sussexes, Prince Harry and Meghan Markle. We can talk about Britney Spears. We can talk about, politics and Donald Trump. But, when we go and we try and be change agents, we try and advocate for these celebrities and public figures who do things like speak out against bigotry, speak out against climate change deniers, or whatever it might be. And we want, as people who are compassionate, who are empathetic, we want to speak up for them. But I feel like we can't do that without addressing a bigger problem at hand. What we have at hand is a societal problem. We live in the day and age of the narcissist. And what does it come back to? It's sort of like a collective mental disability. It truly, truly is. And I don't claim to be an expert on any level, but you know what? I am an empath. I know that I feel things on that empathic level. And for those of you who don't know, an empath is someone who literally can put themselves in the shoes of another person and feel compassion for that person from a very personal stance, and that is what this world right now is lacking. Now, for empaths like me, to navigate in this sort of world we live in could be really, really hard if you don't recognize that we do in fact live in the day and age of the narcissist. So I don't claim to be an expert. I just know that I'm well, I'm well. But every day I continually put in the work to continue to be well. I continue to meditate and do yoga and speak with my therapist, my therapist who understands me at a deep personal level. And I'm not ashamed to say that my therapist is an amazing Black woman, even the fact that she can sort of connect with me on that basic level and understand where I'm coming from in the background that way. The fact that I continually try and be a student of the world. I never ever shut myself off to discovering or learning more. That's basically the toolbox of the empath and how to be emotionally intelligent in the day and age of the narcissist. So I don't claim to be an expert. I've been through it, and I see people out there really, really suffering at the hands of all of these little tendrils of narcissism in their life, and it's not coming from them necessarily. We all have little spectrums of narcissism or Machiavellianism or whatever it is, but those who are truly narcissists, diagnosed or undiagnosed, They're walking all around and they're stomping on your hearts. And so if you're unable to really recognize that we live in the age of the narcissist, but also understand the narcissists themselves, empaths are gonna keep falling into a really, really, really painful trap, a painful cycle. If you're someone, who feels really deeply, who's really sensitive, I recommend, if you don't know if you're an empath or not, I recommend you to look at my other videos about empaths, or about toxic friends who sabotage your friendships, bad bosses. Look at my other videos talking about those subjects, because I explain a little bit more about what the signs are if you are an empath, and if you don't know it or whatever, how you can identify it. But really quickly, if you feel things really, really sensitively, if you feel like, if you're going around new people, for example, and you feel like you need to have a right mindset for that, you're not the type of person who could just walk into a room full of new people. Even if you're extroverted, you could be completely extroverted and be an empath. But you definitely come from a place of needing to protect your energy. And for people who aren't empaths, that word energy probably won't even mean anything for them. But if you are an empath, you know exactly what I mean. And if you are an empath and you don't even know if you're an empath, you know exactly what I mean. It's like you have to protect that energy, and you have to cultivate some positive energy to kind of create a shield when you go out into the world and other people's energy has an opportunity to seep into yours. If you can think of what people are feeling before they even have to say it, if you can read it on their face, if you can read it in their smile, if you can just even sense their presence. Maybe they don't even have, maybe they got a blank expression on their face, but you just feel their energy. You could be an empath. Empaths are highly sensitive people. And so that's what the narcissist sort of takes advantage of. Narcissists are caught in this, horrid cycle of looking for validation that they didn't get in early blueprints of their life. And so, in one way, they need that validation, but in another way, there's an inferiority complex to it, and they think that deep down, they think that they don't really deserve it. And so, you can have compassion for the narcissist. I'm going to go ahead and just, say, I would say at least 70-80% of the time with narcissists, you just need to, show them compassion and keep it moving, cut them out of your life and keep it going if you can. Sometimes those people are your parents or your boss or a friend or whatever that might be. So sometimes, not necessarily a friend, friends you can kind of regulate, but sometimes that narcissist might have a relationship in your life, or the parent of your children, for example. And obviously it's not so clean cut and dry to just be able to cut something off with the parent of your child or whatever that might be. But I mean, narcissists, it's always going to be there. Even self-aware narcissists, that's always going to be there. It's truly like a foundational, they had a foundational fragment early on. And so it's embedded in them. But I know that there are some people with narcissistic personality disorders who are happily married, for example. There are some people with narcissistic personality disorders who are extremely aware, and they have functional families. They're in functional relationships. They care about others. They're humanitarians. That does exist. I'm just saying it's the minority. And those people who are functional narcissists, who really can have like that authentic level of compassion and have functional relationships, functional families, whatever that might be, functional friendships, or work relationships, whatever that dynamic is that you have with your narcissist, they have had to do a lot of work. A lot of work, like I cannot underemphasize that, because again, the narcissist is not just an inflated ego. It's not just like insecurity. There are deep traumatic wounds that they hold, and that narcissism is like a defense mechanism. So understand a little bit more about the narcissist, and you can understand better how to avoid falling into the traps of sabotaging your own success. because that's something that narcissists seem to be so famous at, is sabotage of success, sabotage of self-love, self-confidence of others and of themselves. It just seems to be something that is so present with the entire narcissistic demographic. So that's something to keep in mind. I'm going to read you an article that I read. Like I said, not an expert, not a guru, but I do study a lot. I do like to look around in spaces, and I know I pull from my own experience. Now, this is a psychiatrist. Well, I think he's a psychiatrist. I'm not sure if I could call this person a psychologist or a psychiatrist. Let me see here. Let me see. So it's Dr. Jonas Webb, and hopefully I'm pronouncing that name correctly. If you guys have ever heard of this person, let me know. But I did scrub their site, and I really liked what I saw. This therapist or psychologist, psychiatrist, however you want to call it. Okay, well, I do see a picture, but I don't really see a bio. I do see services. It says couples therapy, individual therapy, family therapy, supervision of licensed mental health professional, and it says, sorry, no Skype therapy. So I guess she does not do Skype therapy, so don't be hitting her up for Skype therapy. But, I don't know if she is a psychologist or a psychiatrist, but I mean, I do work in advertising, so I did have to study psychology to a certain extent during undergraduate and my master's degree. And looking at this, if I had to call it, seeing what she focuses on, I would say that she's a psychologist and not a psychiatrist. Yeah, I think I definitely would probably go with that. It doesn't say it. It doesn't say if she's a psychologist or a psychiatrist, but I know that psychiatry usually is a little bit more focused on the chemical element of things. I mean, psychiatry can also be behavioral. It could really be looking at talking and stuff, but generally it seems like therapy is much more therapeutic. It's more like talking. But again, like I said, I'm not an expert. But this is Dr. Jonas Webb. She's a therapist. And on this website, I mean, she talks about a lot of great stuff. She talks about mental illness, about therapy, about anxiety, about stress, whatever, you know. And this particular article I found to be really helpful about narcissism. But she also talks about racism. And that's one of the first things that really highlights to me that somebody is in the right space. And if they truly acknowledge that we live in a bigoted world. Anyone who's like, oh, the U.S. is not a racist country, the U.K. is not a racist country, Australia, it's like, what world are you living in? So that's a big flag for me. The fact that she talked about that, I was like, okay, this lady's cool. I know that's like very rudimentary to be like, oh, I'm going to trust what this person says. But it wasn't just that. It's also, when we read this article together, you'll see that it's quite good. It gave me a lot of insight into the behaviors of narcissists, because speaking of my own personal testimony, I've only had a handful of them in my life, but they did so much almost irreparable damage. And it was reparable because I had the right tools at hand. All those tools we just talked about, you know. And, you know, I just refused to be defeated by the narcissist. And when they see you move on from them, they hate it. They hate it at their core. But I have had that handful of people, from professional colleagues to friends to exes, you know, like romantic exes, to even some family members to a lesser extent, but probably they were on the spectrum of that sort of narcissistic personality. And you have to advocate for yourself, because these people will really drop all of their childhood stuff on you, and before you know it, you're just like, why am I depressed? Why do I got an anxiety disorder? I never had one before. Why did I used to love painting and I haven't picked up a paintbrush in 2 years? You'll just look and your life will be in crumbles and you're like, what the heck happened? So it's important for the empath to be equipped against this. So Dr. Jonas Webb says the sad connection between childhood emotional neglect and narcissism. So she says, believe it or not, there is a sad connection between childhood emotional neglect, or CEN, and narcissism. If you know very much about either, you probably find that difficult to believe. After all, people who grew up with childhood emotional neglect have a strong tendency to view themselves and their own needs as unimportant and secondary to others, whereas in contrast, those with narcissism are known for putting themselves and their own needs first. How then could these two opposite personality styles be related? Actually, in quite a few important ways. She goes on to say, but before we talk about how these two are linked, let's first define them both. So I kind of, if you need to like pause and rewind and come back to this, it's okay, because I actually kind of had to read through this a couple of times to really grasp the concept. And I'll try my best to synthesize this for you. But again, I'm not an expert, So Dr. Webb goes on to say childhood emotional neglect and define that. So CEN. So she says childhood emotional neglect happens when your parents fail to respond enough to your emotions and emotional needs as they raise you. Pause there. How many times with the narcissist that you guys have had in your life, because I know absolutely for me, I can think back to when I first met the narcissist, and we got on the subject of parents, My parents weren't perfect, but I definitely had a well-rounded childhood, and I had parents who really nurtured me emotionally, my siblings and myself. And so I guess that's something that I definitely have to feel compassion when people didn't have the same upbringing as me. And looking back on every single narcissist who tried to sabotage my success and who I had to cut out of my life, I think back on when we first met and them telling about their family dynamic, and there was absolutely some sort of emotional neglect every single time with all the narcissists that have been in my life who've done just crazy stuff. So she goes on to say, this sends you, a child, a subtle message. Your feelings don't matter. Children who receive this message automatically push their feelings down, basically welling them off so that they will not be troubled by them. I'm going to pause there again. Think about how many people, especially politicians, that just seem very checked off, seem very emotionally unintelligent. The ones that we talk about all the time, ones who can accomplish and garner a lot of success in this lifetime, monetarily and with their businesses, with their careers, but they just seem like sociopaths, It just seems like they don't understand love and emotion and compassion in a normal way. We have that proof right here. They didn't get that foundation that they needed. And I'm not saying we should go going boo-hoo for all the narcissists. I mean, boo-hoo, we all have problems. But at the same time, for me, for example, with the narcissists in my life, it was a given that they had to go. I mean, I just couldn't deal with that energy. As an empath, it was too heavy. I literally couldn't deal with it. But at the same time, it was what permitted me as a woman of faith to forgive them, because I saw that they really actually truly were the victims. Even though I was the victim at the hands of their emotional abuse, they were originally the victim, and it came from their foundations. So it helps you to forgive. It helps you to have a little bit more compassion. So she goes on to say, children who receive this message automatically push their feelings down, basically welling them out so that they won't be troubled by them. This may allow you to cope in your childhood home, but in adulthood, having your feelings blocked causes all kinds of problems in your life. Having your feelings walled off is basically a recipe for feeling disconnected and unfulfilled in your adult life. It makes emotions puzzling, keeps your relationships lacking, and makes you feel less important, less valuable, and less valid than other people. Does that not make sense? How many times have you had the narcissist in your life and it seems like they were both cultivating and manipulating your success at the same time? It was like they would push you forward 2 steps and then they knock you back down 10 steps. And then push you forward 5 steps again and then knock you back down. It was like they couldn't pick a side. They couldn't pick whether they wanted you to succeed or fail. It's because they literally, their adulthood is rife with not understanding how to process emotions in a healthy way, especially those emotions like jealousy or envy or and wanting to accomplish things that others have, but not having the set of tools to actually be able to get there. They feel super important, but at the same time, they feel worthless. And that's the common factor there. So the next section says narcissistic personality. So she goes on to say narcissism exists on a continuum, all the way from having some narcissistic traits all the way to the other end, the more extreme narcissistic personality disorder, which is an official clinical diagnosis. So that basically means you can have, like we said, most people who have little narcissistic traits, and that could just literally be like, oh, some days you want to take a little self-care and have your husband or your wife watch TV while you do your nails and paint your nails. That can literally be like small traces of narcissism that everybody has, all the way up to the like actually clinically diagnosed or even undiagnosed extreme narcissistic personality disorder, the more extreme cases. She goes on to say a person with narcissistic traits is likely seen as self-centered, we just talked about that, and somewhat grandiose. For example, they may toot their own accomplishments often, be willing to step on others to get to the top, and thrive in the limelight. A person with narcissistic personality disorder takes all of those a few steps further. But some other likely qualities of the personality disorder include a desperate need to be admired, inability to feel empathy for others, arrogance, plus a willingness to exploitate others to achieve their own needs for power and control. Like, what's the common thread here? Power and control. It's like some people exist on love and compassion and humanity and helping others. But these people, they truly exist on power and control because it's like the only blueprint that's been set for them. So it says 5 sad connections between childhood emotional neglect and narcissism. Number 1, and I'm not going to read the whole description, but you can come, I'll put the link to this article in the bio and you can check it out yourself because I thought it was extremely helpful. One of the causes of CEN, childhood emotional neglect, is being raised by a narcissistic parent. So it perpetuates itself. Narcissistic parents raise narcissistic children, But like we said, there are those diagnosed people with narcissistic personalities who go on to have functional marriages, functional businesses, functional families. It's just really all about putting in the mental health work that you need to do. Number 2, most narcissists grew up with an extreme variety of emotional neglect. I mean, again, it doesn't excuse their behavior, but it kind of gives you a little bit of a reason why they act like that. And it helps you find forgiveness in your heart. Don't hold on to anger to the narcissist, guys. Because, like, I guarantee you, they might be angry that they lose your narcissistic supply, as they like to call it, or other words, attention. But they don't feel it in the same way as you do. And eventually, they're going to get over it and they're just going to find another narcissistic supply. So, literally, don't internalize that. So, number 3, people with pure childhood emotional neglect are drawn to narcissists and vice versa. So again, that's how that thing perpetuates itself. If you had neglect, you can be drawn to a narcissist. And narcissists can be drawn to each other because they have that same transactional outlook on love and connection and relationships and Um, it just, like I said, it perpetuates itself. Number 4, many emotionally neglected people have a narcissistic sibling. And so it says actually it could be a little bit genetic. Number 5, the hidden inner cores of narcissistic people and those with childhood emotional neglect are very much the same. So it ends to say, yes, there is a sad connection between childhood emotional neglect and narcissism. If you were to meet a CEN person and a narcissistic person on the same day, you would see how truly opposite they are. Yet these two disorders, though so very different, in a strange and paradoxical way, cause and perpetuate each other. Both narcissism and childhood emotional neglect could be wiped off the planet if all the parents in the world did one crucial thing: noticed, validated, and responded to their children's emotional needs. Then the sad connection between CEN and narcissism would not matter at all, because every child would know deep down, without a doubt, that they matter. So let's talk about this for a second, and then we'll wrap up here. Essentially, I think all that you need to know taking away from this is that narcissism is a bitch. Narcissism is a bitch, and you can have compassion for people who grew up with some sort of emotional neglect, or grew up with parents who were narcissistic themselves, and so in turn, the kid, that's the only blueprint that they ever got, was that love should be about power and control and not about compassion and empathy. For the most part, unless you see these narcissists really, really doing the deep mental health, spiritual, physical work that it takes for them to truly be functioning, compassionate parts of society who actually really has emotional intelligence, unless you really see them doing the work, I really recommend for you to cut them out of your life, because as we said, they sabotage success because they never ever got that love that they needed in the most foundational years, the formidable years of their life. And so they don't know how to support functionally. I'm talking about the most extreme cases, not the ones who have sought out the help that they truly need. The most extreme cases, all they can do in the face of your success, especially you as an empath, is cultivate it, especially if it's a friend type person. If it's a narcissist and it's a friend, they will applaud your successes, but then they'll sabotage it. They'll push you up those 2 steps forward and then break you back down. My recommendation, have compassion for them and encourage them to get the help that they need. If you really see that something is wrong, really try to encourage them to get the help that they need in a compassionate way. But like I said, I feel like 70-80% of the time, you just got to cut it out. Especially right now. And what you can do is advocate for parents. Advocate for good parents, If you've got those narcissistic type personalities in your family, for instance, if you need to, walk up to them and say, hey, why don't you speak with a therapist? Because the way you talk to your kids is atrocious. It's like Dr. Webb said, if we had more parents that thought about the emotional needs and the emotions of their children, we would have less narcissists walking around today. But other than that, don't put the world on your shoulder. It's not your responsibility to solve those foundational issues that your narcissist had in their formative years of life. So I'll leave it there. I would like to know what you guys think in the comments. We'll definitely be talking about this more, because it's definitely a cat and mouse game when talking about the empath and the narcissist. So we'll come back to this even more, but I hope that this video was helpful in a way. Advocate for yourself, guys. Love, self-love, take care of your mental health, your spiritual health, your body. Cut out toxic energy that doesn't belong in your life, and don't hold hate in your heart. Have compassion and forgiveness, but sometimes keep your distance. So I'll leave it there, guys. Let me know what you think. If you're new to the channel, hit the like and subscribe button, hit the bell so you know whenever I post a video, and I'll see you next time. Okay, bye. Bye.